In this video, I'll be building a set of dungeon platforms for my tabletop games. I'll be showing how I created the stylized look for stonework and more. These are simple to make and are a great addition to add verticality to games. So there's a bit of story behind this project. If you've been following me on Instagram, you may have seen these unfinished game board pieces. Well, before these I had much larger ones that were shelved in favor of the more shallow canal pieces. I held on to these pieces knowing that I could use them for a future project. I realized that filling in the gaps and flipping them upside down makes for a really great platform. I'm going to need a ton of bricks for this project. I start by cutting down XPS foam into smaller chunks. I'm going to use a hot wire table to speed up the brick cutting process. This could technically be done with a good utility knife, but it'd just take much longer. The half-inch foam is cut down into 1 cm strips. I'm cutting out a bunch to make sure I have enough bricks. I don't want to have to return back to this stage once I get started with the brick laying. These strips are then cut down into even 1 cm by 1 cm strips. I'm holding on to the offcuts since these thinner strips will be used as my smaller bricks. The strips are then cut down 2 cm wide, creating my final bricks. I do my best to make sure the dimensions are accurate. It'll become obvious if the bricks are not the same height once they become stacked on top of each other. The foam cuts are really sharp and geometric. To make them look like stones, I toss the foam into a container of rocks. This also helps separate all the pieces that are stuck to each other from the hot wire table. You can see the before and after once the foam pieces are shaken. The next step is to start laying down the bricks. I prefer to start with the corners first, then work inwards. I'm mixing in half-thick bricks to give the wall a stylized look. For a more realistic wall, the bricks shouldn't be too drastically different in thickness. I personally prefer this look and it matches the style of the rest of my terrain. There's a lot of flexibility when creating walls and it's fun to play around with different sizes. It's important to place the different bricks in a way that doesn't form any obvious patterns. The placement should be random. Bricks are overlaid on top of the joint of the 2 bricks below to ensure that the structure is durable. I'm gluing my bricks onto these foam platforms I had from another project, but these could have easily been substituted with something else such as an empty box. I'm using quick-dry wood glue since it works very well with foam and allows for some working time before fully drying. Larger strips were created then cut down into rectangles. These pieces were textured with tinfoil to make them look like weathered stone. The pieces are then put into place as the trim of the platform. A big thank you to Archon Studio for sending me their Abomination Vault terrain kit. This box is loaded with dungeon pieces and I thought it'd be great to incorporate some of them into these platforms. These larger floor tiles will work nicely for the smaller dungeon platforms I had in mind. I first measured out a brick foundation that fits the dungeon tile. I then start creating my walls the same way as the larger platforms. I'm making sure that these smaller platforms are the same height as the larger one so I can connect them with bridges and other fun stuff. Wood glue worked great for attaching these plastic tiles to the foam bricks. Similar to the larger platforms, the walls are given a trim of larger stones. This hybrid way of crafting is fun and opens up a lot of possibilities. Here you can see me experimenting with some smaller column obstacles. The half-height walls also make for some great cover terrain for 32mm scale miniatures. I decided I want the larger platform to have a more natural grassy top. I start by putting down a coat of PVA glue. A mixture of coarse and fine sand is then applied. Once dried, I start painting. There's a bunch of different ways of creating textured grounds, including creating an all-in-one mixture. The process I'm using here is what I'm used to, and I find it works really well for applications like this. I'm making sure to water down my paint to help with the coverage over the sand. Next, I'm base coating all the bricks in black. This is an important step since this color will be visible in some spots as a shadow. I thought I'd have to use a rattle can or airbrush primer for the plastic bits, but it turns out there is no need. A thin coat of craft paint worked really well. The technique I'm using to paint the bricks is considered overbrushing. I'm painting each brick one by one and usually in only one brush stroke, and making sure that my brush isn't oversaturated with paint. I'm also interchanging the colors I'm using, creating a range of dark to light greenish grays. This technique leaves behind some really nice shadows from the black paint underneath and makes the stone texture pop. The plastic tiles were painted in the same way, overbrushing on the paint and allowing some black to show through. The grays were then blended a bit and then given a highlight to make them pop. Time to finish up the grass platform. I give the ground a dry brush of gray to make the larger pieces of sand look like stones. I then apply a coat of watered down PVA glue across the entire ground. Next, I shake on some flock from a higher angle, making sure it's evenly distributed. I'm going for a full coverage, but I'm being careful not to oversaturate the ground with flock. It creates a more interesting look when there's a bit of ground showing through. The walls are quite monotone at this point. In order to break that up, I'm using a brown pigment powder. This adds contrast to the paint scheme and really makes the details pop. Next, I'm mixing up some flock and PVA glue. This mossy mixture is then applied to the walls to create more contrast both in color and texture. And that wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for future hobby content. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.